To the Money Table. My name is Rhonda Chaplin, and I'm here with Mark Mullen.
How you doing, Rhonda?
How are you today?
I am doing good. You know that this month is actually important. Well, every month is important to us, but this particular month is Life Insurance Awareness Month, and I'm so excited because we're going to jump a little bit into your story. I know I'm jumping the gun here, but before we do that, I want to go into what's popping in the news today.
So, Mark, you talked about that, this month we're highlighting Life Insurance Awareness Month. What's popping in the news?
Well, I got the opportunity to listen to an amazing story, and it's called the Jessica story. And it's really impactful because one of the things we have to understand is that for so many people out there, they don't have or really a true understanding of what life insurance is. They just think of it as this, oh my goodness, we're talking about death thing, right?
Right. It is so much more than that.
Oh, so much more. As a matter of fact, you're going to be touching on that so much more later on.
Yes. And, you mentioned Jessica, and I love Jessica's story. When I first heard about it, it was almost as if she was sharing a little piece of my story. But, Jessica, 30 years old, married, just gave birth to a baby, and she had another toddler.
Correct, yes.
Around 2.5 years old.
Yes.
And, normal day in the life, and she received a call after a physical with her doctor, and, the news that no one really wants to hear.
Exactly.
And she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And, she decided to go through the surgery, the chemo, the radiation. But one thing that her and her husband really didn't prepare for, because they had, health insurance, but they didn't really understand that there's still a price tag that comes and it hits your family unexpectedly.
Exactly.
So here it is, she's trying to focus on, her health, recovering, while still tending to, her husband, 2 small children, and now faced with all of these medical bills.
Exactly. And so when we look at the life insurance part, so many of us just think about the death benefit. So we plan for that. But what about, like you said, you're still alive and something like this happens, like Jessica.
And one of the great things about her story is not what happened, but because she was connected to an agent that really took an interest in their overall why. And the agent had talked to them previously about the living benefit, but like so many times, it's kind of like, no offense, to you as an agent or to me, right? But sometimes we're rattling off so much information that it's just like, yeah.
Right, you can't absorb it all,
Exactly. But the thing is that the agent knew enough to say, okay, here's the situation. But not only was the agent just their kind of life insurance agent, he became part of the family.
Exactly.
So when he heard about what was going on, he immediately contacted them and said, hey, I know that I don't want you to worry. I want you to focus on the recovery. And at that point, the accelerated living benefits portion of the life insurance was able to help them pay off some of the medical bills.
Exactly. And that's what you call really strategic planning, understanding that you're covering multiple contingencies. So we want to address the worst case scenario, but sometimes that worst case scenario still requires you to be here.
Yes,
and so that's where, with the right agent or advisor, you can have someone look out for all these different things.
Exactly.
And
be able to position the fact that there's so much power and flexibility in life insurance.
Exactly.
And, you're so modest because you actually know the agent that helped us.
Well, yeah.
But what I love is that, we're attached to an organization that really cares. It's not just about the policy. It's about caring. It's about building the relationship.
Well, that's why we work so well, because we're not in it to sell a product.
Exactly.
And that's what you might have been sold. Even myself was sold a product. What we are doing is we are introducing a strategy to help fulfill your why, your true purpose. That's the difference. And that's why for you and I, it's so important to, number one, understand who we're working with and have them understand that hey, we're here to create a what do you call it? A vision for you.
Correct.
Help them to understand the vision so you know what that life insurance is doing for you.
Yeah, and even though we're talking and highlighting Life Insurance Awareness Month, but really what we're highlighting and speaking about is how to help business owners, individuals, just people, how to live their life well.
Well, that's where I believe our main topic, and I'm so excited for everyone to hear this, is really going to come into play because your story is amazing, and for many of us out there, they would say, well, I don't need life insurance.
Right.
And
I thought the same thing.
Exactly.
I don't have any, and we spoke about this.
Right.
Initially, I was like, I don't have any kids. Why do I need life insurance? But then that switched 4 years ago. And I'm so glad and thankful that, you really highlighted, not on my excuse, but you highlighted on the why, how protecting myself while I'm living so I can live well. And, and it would be a pleasure to kind of go into detail in my story about that.
So let's go into your story.
Okay, let's just jump right into it.
So Rhonda, this main point, we're going to talk about your story. And it's near and dear to me because, number one, I was there when it happened.
Yes.
And the fact that you had this tool, this strategy in place. And yes, I played a part, but I'll be honest, you initiated it. So you had the foresight to understand that if something happens, I need things in place.
Right.
And I think our viewers are going to really understand that when you share your story about your journey.
And that was one thing that was very key when I made the decision to leave my I retired,
right,
if you will, from corporate America. I had played a huge role, in human resources for many years. And when I transitioned out of it, I wanted to make sure that the same coverage, the same benefits that I had with my employer, I wanted to mirror that as much as possible as a business owner as well. So, fast forward 6 months after I retired, that's when we our paths crossed, and you kind of shared with me, a different perspective of how I knew about the death benefit, but you highlighted for me in terms of the living benefit.
Yes.
Because I wanted to kind of down the coverage. Because I was like, I don't want to leave my family with too much money.
You made that very clear. I love my family.
But the living benefit was, huge. And I did not realize, how impactful that would have been 2 years later after I kind of enrolled in that policy.
Exactly. So let's just dive right in and hear what led to having this strategy come into place to actually benefit you.
Well, as you mentioned, you were there.
Yes, I was.
But in June of 2017, that was when kind of things just shifted very quickly for me. On a casual Saturday ride, and by casual, I mean we had planned to do 50 miles on our bikes.
And I think our viewers need to understand we're both cyclists here, so doing 50 miles on a Saturday was nothing for us. That's our normal.
It was just like, how many miles are we going to do? We're going to go for 60 this week?
Exactly.
But this particular ride, we decided to do 50 miles. It was a group of us. And, unbeknownst to me that morning, I would have a traumatic cycling accident. We were going about 26 miles per hour. And don't remember the details of what happened. I just remember waking up and on the road and my head was hurting. But I do remember, typical cyclist, I heard my Garmin beeping and I was like, somebody turn off my Garmin.
And for those of you who don't know, the Garmin is just a cycling computer that we use.
Yes.
And as a cyclist, you first want to make sure that your Strava is off.
Exactly. I was like, I'm going to capture this ride. Because we were about 20 miles into the ride.
I want to say about 20, yes.
So I was like, I got to capture these miles.
And then
I remember I said, is my bike okay?
Exactly, right? Those are the two most important things. Then you worry about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And thankfully a nurse, she pulled off, she saw exactly what happened. So she knew kind of what questions to ask. But still at that point, I just didn't realize the severity of the accident. And a lot of cyclists, they wanted me to go to the doctor. They said, hey, head injury, you need to go. But it wasn't until the next morning where it was like, something is not right here. there.
Yes.
And then I went. And that's when I received the news that I had a massive concussion.
Correct.
And I did have some neck injuries and also some limitations to the left side of my body.
And one thing I would like to point out here is that we know now that the science behind concussions has really become in the forefront now.
Yes.
So prior to that, you had a concussion, get over it, move on.
Exactly.
But in your case, and as you mentioned, we both mentioned, I was there, and unfortunately and fortunately at the same time, I witnessed it.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, I have the helmet that was involved in the accident, and I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but it's very important to understand that this is one of the most powerful protections when it comes to a cyclist. And so, like I said, I was there, and unfortunately, you had the full impact of your head hitting the road, asphalt. This wasn't dirt. This was asphalt. And like you said, there was a nurse that drove by and everything. And yes, someone delayed on getting to the hospital, but you did go.
Right.
And tell us a little bit more.
So, even though I knew the importance of the helmet, it wasn't until, I actually brought the helmet to the doctor and they saw how it cracked.
Yes.
And at that point, even before the test results, they just automatically said, if your helmet cracked, you don't understand how hard your head hit the road.
Correct.
And even still, I don't think it resonated because I'm just like, okay, well, just tell me what I need to do to make my head stop hurting.
Right, because at the end of the day,
I'm a business owner.
You're a business owner, and you have clients that are waiting on you, and your life still moves on.
Exactly.
So you got to move.
And like many business owners, it becomes where in the back of your mind, hey, if I don't work, I don't get paid.
Exactly.
And in my head at the time was just, oh yeah, I'll just rest and for the weekend, and then
for the
bounce
hour,
back.
right?
But that's exactly what happened. And then 3 days later, the light sensitivity, it was just the headaches. I just couldn't take anymore. And when I went back to the doctor, all of a sudden it went from, I don't think you understand the magnitude of the accident. And that's when they said, you know what, the only way that you're going to recover is if we're going to have to put you on brain rest. What that meant was I couldn't do anything. That meant no computers, no TV, the lights, everything really bothered my head. Light sensitivity. If I went outside, I had to wear sunglasses. Couldn't be on the computer. So that meant now calling all my clients and facing the reality of, wow, this is bigger than what I thought. And it was so big that for 3 months, I really didn't work.
Right.
I sat in the dark. I couldn't even take being on the phone because the voices did something to my head.
And one thing I want to share to our viewers is that at this time, your daily commute was what? 16 hours?
Oh, yeah, on average. It was just, a client, because I had I had several contracts in New Jersey. So, living in Maryland, it was just like, oh, yeah, drive there, drive back home.
Just 4 hours there, 4 hours there, 6 hours there. But I mean,
that was my life.
That's what you did. So, yes, you can brain rest, but again, the financial impact, let's just call it what it is.
Correct.
Your bottom line is taking a hit.
Yeah, I couldn't fly.
Yep.
So everything, my normal lifestyle came to a screeching halt on June 10th, 2017. And it still is ingrained in my brain, the date, but that's all I really remember. So oftentimes I'm asked for specific details on what happened. I remember a lot of people were calling me, what happened? And I just don't remember. Yes. I don't remember the details of it. And it really was, through a lot of therapy and things of that nature. But it's really not about what happened. It's as much as it was the realities of I was able to take the time that I needed in order to recuperate after I got out of my own way. Because the reality is that I practice what I preach. I tell people all the time that you need to have a contingency savings plan, an emergency savings, so you have access to it, at least a minimum of $1,000, and then you have
for the contingency plan.
Yes, and then you have 6 months of savings, kind of socked away somewhere else that you can't have easy access, and that's part of being a financial peace coach.
Right.
That's the model.
Because and just to touch on that, because you were very clear, you had created these buckets, which is just the name for where we have the funds, right? So you created a contingency bucket. You created.
I need to adopt the easier say a bucket.
Right. But I love what you created here. The contingency, the 6 months worth of savings. You even had a third one, which we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But you created these buckets because you need to make sure that you protect yourself.
Correct.
Do you know what I see? What people do is they use their retirement bucket as an emergency vehicle. Right. And I tell people that's not a strategic plan because that bucket is designed. Yes, you have to address the taxes, but that bucket is designed for the future you. Correct. That's not meant for the Rhonda today. Correct. It's meant for the Rhonda in the future. Correct. So you protected the Rhonda in the future, but you still addressed the Rhonda today.
Exactly. And and a lot of it was around, and we talk about it all the time, being single, I don't have a secondary source of income. Right. I can't rely on someone else, nor do I want to be a burden to my parents or even the community of loved ones, in kind of my box, right? Yes. Those closest to me. So I wanted to make sure that in the event, the what ifs, that's the reason why I was really adamant about that. And then the third bucket that you mentioned was around the living benefit piece. And I did not...
and that living benefit is coming from?
Life insurance. Exactly. Because, what the thing is that I never imagined, like so many other people, right? You just think, oh, it's there. I did it because you told me to.
That's what I was going to say. You're only like, okay, I'm signing here.
And honestly, that's what it was initially, because it was the first time really that I had heard about it. So it became where it was just, all right, you know what? It was an hour-long conversation. My attention span was already gone. It was like, where do you want me to sign? Just tell me where to sign.
Thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that.
But I didn't realize until this moment in time how that one signature, how that one kind of, I didn't have to understand everything in that particular moment, allowed me to say, you know what, I can step away from my business. It would not impact the people that were dependent upon me, because I had a team, of people. I was able to trust them that they would be able to do their part. But more importantly is that my business wasn't impacted. Right. And when, fast forward a year and a half after recovery, I was able to start to really transition back to my full life, if you will, but more on a realistic standpoint. I no longer do my drives to Jersey and back. So with a few alterations, but really the conversation around, last year me making the decision to get my life license was because I started to think about how many other business owners can afford to take 12 months, 2 years, or even 6 months to really say, I'm going to focus on my health, or I'm going to focus on things I need to take care of without impacting their business. Yes. And that was really my heart. And that's why even I share my story, because at first it was just, but it's not as traumatic as having breast cancer. But I realized that, it was traumatic because it took 2 years of therapy and unlearning some things and relearning, because I operate differently. I think differently, but I'm more compassionate. And even if I see a cyclist not wearing a helmet, I pull over. Where's your helmet?
Yes.
But it became my why of how to live life well in anticipation of, the what ifs without fear. Yes. And, for leaders, in whatever capacity, in ministry, in nonprofits, for-profits, the importance of having that, and I coined it shepherd protection, right? Yes. Because everyone's a leader, right? But being able to say, you know what, it's important for me to protect not only myself, my family, my business, but if I'm faced with a health situation, that I have these things in place to be able to take the time that I need in order to recover well.
So your story is really touching in on a couple of things that people need to understand. That number one, we can't plan for the future for all contingencies.
Right.
So we have to make sure we cover our bases. And utilizing that living benefit that you had, you at least covered a part of it to say, look, if something happens,
Right.
that this component, this strategy here, well, let's name them all. Your contingency.
Yes.
Okay, so that covers the $1,000. That's your minimum and everything. And what is that? What does that cover?
So that covers any prescriptions, any co-pays, because the thing is that I often hear, well, I have health insurance and I have life insurance through my employer.
Yes.
That does not mean that you are covered 100%.
Exactly.
There are co-pays, there's co-insurance, there's deductibles. There are a lot of things that have to be met before.
What if you get in an
covered.
accident and your insurance coverage doesn't cover the ambulance or those type of things?
Exactly,
Yes.
because the thing is dependent upon where you get hurt. So if you get hurt on the job, then certain cases workers' comp will cover that. But if you get hurt in the case where, let's say I was an employee, and I was on the cycling accident.
Right, that was personal time.
It's short-term disability may cover it, but here's the whole thing. It's still only 60% of your salary.
Exactly.
So there's still, in all situations, there is a need to have some sort of bucket.
Right.
Established buckets to be able to cover all of these situations so that way you don't have to worry about it. And that's my whole thing. It's around reducing the stress of how am I going to be able to take care of myself.
Well, that leads to the second bucket, which is the 6 months the 6 months emergency. So I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but I would still like for you to elaborate on that.
It's just covering your expenses. It's as simple as, and I'm not talking about, now I'm guilty of it. I have Wawa in my budget for my coffee in the morning, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about living expenses.
Correct. Keeping the lights on.
Yes. Gas, water, whatever your your required living expenses. That's what you want to make sure that you have covered in your 6-month plan.
But to do that, you have to understand what is the cost to run your household or your business for 6 months.
Correct.
That's where a lot of people kind of fall short because they hear, I need 6 months worth of expenses, but they haven't even formulated what that is.
Right.
So again, you created that contingency, you created the 6 month savings, and then that last component was the life insurance, but more importantly, the living benefits.
Correct. That was the key. So that way, in the event that you exhaust your first 2 buckets, this one now kicks in. And it doesn't have any requirement of if you're an employee, business owner, self-employed, investor. It doesn't matter what your title is or what your W-4 category is. It has to do with you as an individual. But the first step is mindset.
Exactly.
Making that shift to saying, you know what, this is something that I need more information on, or I need to be able to be open to saying, okay, where am I?
Right.
And a lot of people aren't willing to say, I don't have, the right coverage. I don't know what my expenses look like. That's where you need a coach to be able to walk you through that process. And
it's one of the reasons why you got your life insurance license, because even when working with corporate and small business and whatever the dynamics is, this is an area that's not addressed.
Exactly.
It's lacking.
And I'm able to, from, an HR perspective, I'm able to take a look at summary plan descriptions that the employers are offering their employees.
And if you can share with the audience the summary plan description, just tell a little bit of what that is.
That just details what's included in the plan.
Right, all your benefits.
All of the benefits.
Your 401k, your health, all these different things.
And especially the life insurance. It will be able to tell us, right, what it is that's included. What riders do you have?
Exactly.
And we can examine existing policies, and we can help employers to even craft something that is beneficial, for their for themselves and also their team.
Right, exactly. So, and again, we always talk about being proactive.
Yes.
So even as an employee, it's very important to even take your own steps. So if your employer doesn't have a life insurance policy that has these riders, go out and get your own.
But even if you do have one through your current employer, I encourage people to still get one on your own, because even though you have a life insurance policy with your current employer, if you leave that employer, you cannot take it with you.
Exactly. Exactly. So so you brought up such a good point there. So, Rhonda, your story is very phenomenal because of the fact that, number one, it's your story, it's your journey. And I had the blessing to see you go through the journey and to see you now and just as strong as ever and everything. It's a testimony of your willpower, but more importantly, of your planning ahead, just in case you didn't know this was going to happen, but you planned for it. And that's where working with a coach like you and I, to help people understand, number one, what is it you need, your why, the 6 months contingency. Well, what does that 6 months looks like? And so I commend you for that, because your story is going to touch someone, because you're not the only one, especially in the DMV area.
Exactly. And that's what I found out. And Mark, as you will share your own story and your own why and your journey to making the decision to not only get your life license, but to spread the word around the importance.
Well, Rhonda, thank you so much again. And I think that the audience, our viewers, will really understand that working with someone to make sure they have the right amount of coverage, the right riders to meet their whys and their true purpose. And I'm really looking forward to making sure that we continue our mission to get this message out.
Yeah, and I agree. And I look forward to even being that type of agent, and that's not my full scope.
That's just one hat you wear.
But I just admire the agent that stayed so close to Jessica and her family. And, that's my desire in my heart, to be that type of individual, to kind of help build, small business total rewards packages,
but just to let you know,
employees.
You are that person. You're there.
Well, thank you. For more information on what we discussed today, or to have one of us come in and review your summary plan description, please visit www.themoneytable.com and we'll examine your existing policy and ensure you're properly covered. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Money Table.
And to get more information about our topics and videos, visit us at themoneytable.com.